It's the ML Sports Platter brought to you by Western OTB and Batavia Downs Gaming. Stay, play, and dine at Batavia Downs Gaming. Visit them online at BataviaDownsGaming.com. They also have that awesome concert series upcoming. And yes, there's a little bit of a football game on Sunday. You can go watch that. Chiefs-Bills at 34 Rush Thurman Thomas's place. And this guy here knows all about Thurman. He knows all about the Bills. He knows all about the Mafia. He knows all about what it would mean. I mean, my God, it probably would mean more to somebody else than this guy if they were to win it all. It's Buffalo Bills great Jerry Ostroski. The Big O, man. How are you?
Good, Mike. How are you, buddy? I appreciate you having me on.
I love having you. And obviously you're in the media a little bit now too, doing your podcasting, and I'll plug that in a bit, but carve the path for me, and for my listeners and viewers. How do they finally get through the Chiefs?
Well, obviously they've got a pretty good formula right now. They're not turning the football over, and they are getting the other team turned over, which is a big deal. But I think also one of the the nouveau stats as far as analytics go, you watch the Bills, is plus and minus in explosive plays. And while they don't get a ton of explosive plays, they don't give up a ton either. And I think that was the biggest thing this weekend when you looked at this game against Baltimore, just limiting huge runs by Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, and keeping people in check. Now, obviously, they had the touchdown the first series, but they kept things. They got the football on the ground. They didn't allow huge chunk plays very often, and they're just playing really, really good complementary football right now.
So the offensive line has been incredible, in my opinion. I mean, a few years back, you heard a lot of the pundits, they can never figure it out. The guys are in and out. Well, they have figured it out, and they cut Mitch Morse along the way. The Connor McGovern thing, they scouted that way back when he was in high school and college. Boom, boom, slide him right to center, right? And we know the bookend tackles are where it starts. Osiris Torrance has been a slam dunk draft pick as well. When you watch the offensive line, Aaron Kromer, I think one of the most underrated coaches in all of football, when you watch how this has come together and you watch what they do, what do you see?
It's funny, and I think Tony Romo touched on it this weekend. You have teams like Baltimore that have a huge force of tailback, big physical linemen, Linderbaum at center and stuff, and they just can physically move people at will. Then you have teams that run the ball systematically, and I think that the Bills are one of those teams. I think Aaron Kromer and Brady have done a wonderful job of building a running game around concepts. It's not just go out and physically move people from point A to point B. Now, this is a group that can do that, but you look at this group and they're so well rounded. You got a right side that's more of your power side with Spencer Brown and Torrance. And then you've got kind of the next two guys are more long guys that can run real well, and McGovern and Edwards. And then you got Dion that can kind of do both. Yeah. And they just mesh really, really well. But this is a very systematic type of running scheme. I mean, they do things really well. They mix it up. They can run inside zone, outside zone. They run a lot of back concepts, which is showing front side motion or front side blocking, and then the back will purposely take it backside. Not like he sees a cutback and jumps backside. Before the play was snapped, they knew that's where they were going with the ball. They were going to push it backside behind the flow of the offensive line. They can get into some gap scheme stuff. They run a lot of dart, which is those plays where you see Deion Dawkins as the lone puller. And then you add a couple of guys like, you add our tight ends and Kincaid and Knox, and they've done a really good job of being able to. What those guys do is they give you some perimeter blocking. They can give you a little bit of end line blocking, but they can play more of the H role, and then also jump outside and play slot and do some things in the passing game. So you can disguise some packages by the personnel you have on the field. And then recently, if you've seen it, and I saw it a lot this weekend, and he's been doing an awesome job, they insert Reggie Gilliam to get that extra dude that maybe you don't have a hat for. And, you just look at the way this team runs the football right now. It's not just grabbing plays. There is a system behind it. And Kromer and Brady are doing a wonderful job.
They can beat you in a bunch of different ways too. I mean, they can go to Detroit and they can outscore you. They can hang with the Rams and score a ton, but lose close. They can beat you with I'm going to smack the shit out of you with the offensive line. Right. They can beat you 17-13, 27-17, 38-35. But against the Chiefs, it doesn't matter what that number is going to be. if you don't do the little things that the Chiefs have done, right? The Chiefs have walked the tightrope technically almost 2 years now, but they've raised the Lombardi trophy. If I had to give you the long list, and we don't need to go through them, but the little things in football, right?
Right.
What's the most important up here? Third down fundamentals, timeouts, penalties, the turnovers. Probably turnovers for me is number one. Where do you line up there with all the little things that the Chiefs do, the little things that they've just kind of they don't look better than everybody, but Jerry, they do all those little things better than everybody, and they've got QB1. We know about Kelsey, we know about Andy Reid, but they do all those things in between the ropes, right? So if you had to pick the couple, okay, if the Bills get those, they're going to New Orleans.
I look at the Chiefs and the way they play, and it's the Bills played a very Chiefs-like football game on Sunday night. They don't make mistakes. They don't ever kill themselves. And that's the thing about when you play the Chiefs, teams seem to get frustrated. They seem to get impatient. They try to make the big play or do something that's out of character. They make the big mistake, and right away the Chiefs bounce on it and take advantage. That's the one thing about that football team is they're really really good at not making the drastic mistake. Now, obviously, you as a football team have to figure out how to do that. Um, I think the Bills have tried to somewhat emulate what they're doing, kind of like the Chiefs do. I mean, the single biggest thing that the Bills are doing this season that is different is they run the football at will.
Right.
You got the Broncos that come in last week, gave up 96 yards a game. They just crush them. You got the Ravens that came in this weekend, 80 yards a game. They have well over the season average. So that's a big determining factor, I think, in this Bills team. But yeah, when you go play Kansas City, you just have to stay within yourself. You have to stay within your playbook. And if that means it, and me personally, I don't want to see this. That was my one gripe from the game this weekend. If we're in a 3-play sequence, I don't want Josh Allen not having the ball in his hands at all or only once out of 3. I'd like to see him have the ball in his hands more. But you know what? If it takes running the football like that, like they did this past weekend, to not make the mistakes and stay in it, so be it. I mean, this is an old school technical 15-round title fight. And this fight's not going to be won in the first or second round. You got to take it to the deep water. You got to go to 14. You got to go to the 15th round. And that's the thing that Bills, I think, have to do this weekend. Protect the football, try to get takeaways, stay in their running game, keep people in front of them, not give up the big plays, the explosives like we talked about earlier, and just be patient because it's going to happen, but you can't force it against the Chiefs because when you do and you make that big mistake, they will make you pay.
There's nothing in sports I love more than watching Josh Allen be Superman, but I also like the offensive line kicking some ass. I mean, I think you guys don't get enough credit, so this is a lot of fun for me, and I loved watching you play as well. We're here with Jerry Ostroski, the Bills great. Don't forget the Overreaction Buffalo pod right there on all the platforms to go download and follow Jerry on Twitter. I got maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes left with you. I have never wanted anything more in sports than the Bills to win it all. I'm going to be honest with you. I've been in media for a long time. We're supposed to be objective all the way and kind of we leave the subjectivity. And I've done a good job of that the majority of my time, but I cannot hide it. I just can't hide it. I mean, if you could see the other wall, I mean, Jerry, I want this so bad. So number one, what would it mean? I mean, I want to hear it from you, a guy who played there, you know, the Mafia, you have a connection with the town. You were on the team, the last Super Bowl representative, right, in 93. You know what it's like to get and then not the final one, but you feel what it's like, the Super Bowl run and what people are, oh my, could you imagine what you've been there, you've been in the middle of it. What would it mean to you? But also, if it happened, what in the world happens to that town called Buffalo?
That's probably the biggest thing as an athlete. Obviously you always want to reach the pinnacle of your sport. You want to be a champion. You want to be able to wear that ring. But when you live in a town like Buffalo and you spend a lot of time there, and I still go back and have tons of great friends from my time in Buffalo, and like you just talked about, Mike, what it would mean to you to win that championship. That's what it's about. These guys that go on the field every week, they're playing for their families and themselves and their team and those things. But when you go to a place like Buffalo, you can't help but feel that energy of the city and of the fan base and know that you want to win for them. And winning this Super Bowl would be amazing, not only for the team because it would shut up a lot of people, but it would be awesome. I mean, the only time that I guess I can say that it was something similar was I grew up in the city of Philadelphia. I grew up 30 minutes northwest of Philly, and even though I'm a huge, I live and die Bills, I still have that in me from playing, growing up outside of Philly. When Philly finally won that Super Bowl, just what it meant to my family and my friends, and seeing all that. And I, I don't know if they win this, man. I don't know if one day is enough for a parade. They might have to shut that sucker down for a week, man, because
I mean, look,
it's
if
going to be insane.
the Capitals won the Stanley Cup and they shut it down for a few weeks, and it's nothing close to what this would be.
No,
And they, with Ovechkin and all that, and the greatest player, one of the greatest players of all time, certainly. But this is a different animal here, and I think Josh Allen, the way he's connected to the history in the '90s and all that stuff, kind of ropes in. Everything's mushroomed up. It's the biggest sport, the fan
yeah.
base, and it's a phenomenon, right? They become a phenomenon nationally.
You're right, and I think what you hit the nail on the head is that there's some towns that you go to, and it doesn't matter who the person is. They play there, they do whatever, they move on. But in Buffalo, it's always been that way. That there's a connection. For this team to be good, at the quarterback spot, at some other places, there has to be a fan connection. And Josh is that guy. I mean, he's just he's adopted that town. He is about Buffalo. He understands Buffalo, and maybe it's his upbringing and the trials and tribulations it took for him to get where he is. He appreciates the people of Buffalo, and that to me is the biggest thing. Is the Bills right now in this run that they're on, and people talk about the roster and it's not good enough, and it's we're not here to talk about that. But the thing that I will say is this, and the one thing McDermott has done that I think is absolutely amazing, and when people talk about, I'm going to use him because he's the prime example, is Mac Hollins. He's been multiple places, has not had much success at all. He comes to Buffalo and becomes basically a cult hero, right?
Yep.
But McDermott the thing that he's done is he's gotten rid of the old school, conform or be cast out. He's gotten rid of that whole mindset, and he's allowing these guys to be individuals in a team concept. And our left tackle selling snow goggles, Max showing up with no shoes on.
McDermott did Snow Angels.
Right. I mean, there's just all these different things and when I played, if you did stuff like that, you were like, man, this dude's a weirdo, right?
Yeah.
But it's different now. I mean, with social media and the way the world is, you've got to allow these guys to express themselves and be themselves. And that to me is the biggest thing that's going on in One Bills Drive right now is McDermott is allowing these guys to do that within that huge team concept. It's built amazing camaraderie in that locker room. And I've never seen a team as tight as this one is. I mean, I think honestly, these guys honestly really do not only like but love one another. And
I agree with that. Yeah, and I think McDermott, though, I think he was in the middle. I think he was a lot of that old school, and then he was a little bit of this. And he's still super tight, and you can see, and even in the games, but now he's looser, Jerry. He's a looser McDermott. Right. And I think that's what it's spilled down.
I'll say this. I have a buddy that was a general in the Air Guard for a long time, and I went to his retirement ceremony, and there was a conversation. He was part of his speech. They were talking about, people in the military and the change in the military and millennials and how do you deal with them and all this. And he said something that sticks with me to this day, and I use it all the time. He says, if you don't like change, you're really not going to like irrelevance. And I look at some of these franchises and what they're doing the same thing over and over and over again. They're becoming irrelevant.
Pittsburgh.
Buffalo's not one of those franchises. McDermott's not one of those head coaches. Mm-hmm. Beane's not one of those general managers, and it shows on the field, and it's awesome to see, man. It's really cool.
Well, this was amazing, as it always is. Jerry Ostroski, one of my favorites, Buffalo Bills, great, the former offensive lineman, of course. Get him on all the social platforms at Ostrowski_Big O on X. And, of course, the Overreaction Buffalo guys just putting together great content on the daily. It's all brought to you by Batavia Downs Gaming and Western OTB. Jerry, thank you so much for this, and we'll see what happens this weekend, my friend.
Appreciate you, man. Let's talk soon. Thank you very much.